Welcome back. A court in Qatar has convicted and sentenced 8 former officers of the Indian Navy to death on charges of spying on behalf of Israel. Now, reports suggest that these 8 veterans were working for a private company in Qatar that provided training to the Qatar military and haven't been in detention since August of last year. The Ministry of External Affairs has responded to the verdict, saying it will take up the matter with the Qatari authorities and it will continue to provide consular as well as legal assistance. The ministry is also in touch with family members of the Navy veterans and is assuring them that they are on this case. So let's bring you up to speed with a timeline of this case, because very little is known, at least authentically, about what exactly happened with these 8 veterans. What is it that they are alleged to have done in Qatar, and what is it that India can now do to help secure their release? Now, the death penalty has been given for 8 veterans in this case in August of 2022. That's when it came to light. These ex-naval officers were arrested. They were accused of spying for Israel. September of 2022, their bail plea was rejected by a lower court in Qatar, citing, and I quote from that lower court order, damning electronic evidence. In March to June of 2023, that is this year, the trial happened. The veterans pleaded innocence over 2 trials that happened in the lower court. In October of 2023, just earlier this month, the Indian ambassador to Qatar met these naval veterans. I think that was the first time the ambassador had got consular access to these veterans. On the 26th, which is today, we had word that a lower court in Qatar has sentenced to death these 8 Indian Navy veterans. But we're getting a piece of breaking news in connection with this story, after which I'll go to our guest. It's a CNN News 18 exclusive. Top government sources have spoken to CNN News 18 in the aftermath of today's verdict in Qatar. They've told CNN News 18 that this ruling has essentially come from a lower court. It now needs to be confirmed. It needs to be ratified by a constitutional court, so it has to go before appellate courts. Top government sources are confident that they will be going in for an appeal in this case, in an appellate or a higher court, and will place whatever evidence they have in support of the veterans and their character and good conduct. These government sources have also told CNN News 18 they are hoping that basis that evidence, a higher court will mitigate the punishment that's been meted out to the Navy veterans. Sources say that the government will also request the Qatari authorities through back channel diplomacy and will provide all legal aid required by these Navy veterans. So clearly, this is a case that has come like a bit of a bolt from the blue, if you will, at least today's verdict of a death sentence, and that to 8 former Indian Navy officials. It's a case that India has been trying to raise and has been raising with the Qatari authorities, but without much success in terms of pushing the case of these 8 Indian Navy veterans. Joining me now is Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, he's former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs. Bobby Naqvi is former editor with the Gulf News. Ambassador Chakravarti, let me start with you first. Like I said, very little is known in terms of authentic information as to what is it that these Navy veterans are alleged to have done in Qatar. But Qatar claims it was a case of espionage and that the lower court has looked into the evidence against them. The depositions have been recorded and the court has come to the conclusion and they have convinced that they were involved in espionage on behalf of Israel, and they've now sentenced them to death. What is it the government of India can do to try and mitigate the situation?
Well, it seems to me as an observer that it's a mystery wrapped up in an enigma, because no evidence has been put forward. Electronics evidence has been quoted, and in the judicial system in Qatar is not the same as in a democratic country, and it's opaque, it's non-transparent, and so we really don't know what exactly is the problem. After all, they were recruited by a Qatari company which was very close to the government and was providing services like training, etc., to the Qatari Navy. Now, suddenly, this has happened. Who provided the electronic intelligence? There were competing, corporate interests there. Were there others who were not happy with the Indians being there providing this thing? And I don't want to name any country, but you will have to guess, which country I'm talking about, who feel that India should, India, if, who have this rivalry and hostility towards India. So there are a lot of questions here. And despite all the goodwill and other, we have a good relationship with Qatar, 15 billion dollars of trade and 13 billion dollars that Qatari imports, and it's a huge gap. And all these things about 8 lakh Indians working there. So there is a long-standing relationship. So how suddenly this has happened is quite a mystery, actually.
So let me ask Bobby Naqvi, while India has had, particularly in the last decade or so, very good ties with some of the Gulf Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. With Qatar, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. We saw this during the Nupur Sharma episode where Qatar sort of seemingly took the lead and was offended by what she said, and the High Commissioner was summoned in and a démarche was issued. We've also seen from time to time how Qatar has backed Pakistan and the Pakistani position when it comes to Kashmir. It's also taken, slightly uncomfortable sort of stands against India, even within the OIC, when it comes to such matters. So how does India navigate this tricky sort of minefield? Because at the end of the day, the lives of 8 Indian Navy veterans is hanging in the balance, literally.
You're right, Zaka. In the last, especially since 2014, we have seen that the relationship between India and many Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia, UAE, have been elevated to the strategic level, and also with Oman and Bahrain. Qatar is the only country where the relationship have not progressed so well. I mean, still, you have a very strong relationship. You have a $15 billion trade. India is one of the major trade partners, I think 4th largest in terms of imports, Qatari exports. So the relationship is there. Now, what are the options available before India? How they can pursue this case legally? I think if you have to read the statement of MEA, which was issued today after the verdict, it says that India is going to pursue all legal means. Now that means that from court of first instance it has to go to court of appeals, and from court of appeals it has to go to court of cassation. Now, for all cases of death sentence, the Emir of Qatar has the powers to actually repeal the sentence. But then I think we have to talk about that when you reach that stage. Meanwhile, what you can do, what the Indian authorities can do. Obviously, we can ask for more consular access, more frequent accesses. I believe that now the 8 Indian Navy personnel, former Navy personnel, they are, I think, they are kept in cells. Previously, they were kept in solitary confinement. So situation is slightly better, but I'm sure the things can improve. Now we have the since August, I think we have the new ambassador Vipulji. I think he has got fantastic experience in the Gulf. He was previously in Dubai, and before that he was after that he was Joint Secretary Middle East.
Okay.
So he's a fine diplomat. Let's see how and what kind of, I mean, the relationship exists, no doubt about it. But then because the way this whole story has panned out, the information is sketchy. The response also from the Indian authorities has been very guarded. The statement of the foreign secretary spokesperson, I think earlier statement was that we cannot force the Qatari authorities to actually intervene in this case. This case is sub judice, so they cannot leverage the relationship, to get some kind of relief for these 8 Indian detainees.
So we have Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti. So
Jacob, one more point I would like to make.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, Um, uh, None of the Qatari media has reported this verdict. I mean, Al Jazeera's last report was in May. The other newspapers in Qatar, they have not reported it. In the Gulf, whichever media outlets they have reported this story are quoting ANI. So they picked up the ANI story. I mean, it's very surprising why the story hasn't, why information hasn't come from the Qatari authorities.
So that's precisely what I do want to ask Pinaki Ranjan Chakravarti as we get a closing comment. The opacity of the legal process, I think twice in the last year is what we've got consular access, and ultimately now, like I said, the lives of these 8 former veterans is hanging in the balance. The whole opaque nature of the judicial process that they have undergone, and now even like Bobby Naqvi said, the news of this death sentence. How does India deal with that? You can let's say if this were happening in a Western democracy, you have instruments of leverage. But in this case, are we to just wait till the legal process concludes, it goes to the appellate court and then the final court, and only then can any leverage, if at all India has leverage with Qatar, be exercised, and with the ruling establishment in Qatar be exercised?
Yes, I think that is the position, because it is not a democracy. It's an authoritarian, family-ruled Gulf sheikhdom, or call it what you like, monarchy. And there, I don't think transparency works a lot, or democracy is works the way we understand it. So I think this is all tied up with the kind of personal decisions and political decisions influenced by certain quarters or what call it. I think it's a. As I said, it's such opaque, the opaqueness of the system, because this is very personalized governance there. There are, family-ruled, princess and all those things, emirs, as they call it. And they rule according to their, to their understanding of politics and geopolitics. And they think that, and of course, they have the money, let us forget that they are one of the richest, probably the richest country in the world in per capita GNP.
So I'm really sorry we're running out of time, but I think that last point that you made about getting mired in geopolitics, and I think that is the fear of a lot of Indians, as well as, of course, the family members of these 8 veterans, that oftentimes on many geopolitical issues, including the recent Israel-Hamas war that is going on, the position that Qatar has taken seems to be very extreme from what the position that India has taken, or India's friends and partners have taken. And therefore, let this not be an episode in geopolitical wrangling between India and Qatar. We'll see how this story plays out. For the meanwhile, thank you very much for tuning in. I'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time. Good night.